Star Walker Studios presents Game Master's Journey, your multi-dimensional RPG podcast. Sometimes the best way to learn is by example. I've had quite a few requests from listeners to discuss my new Edge of the Empire campaign. Today, I set off again on the Obsidian Monolith to do just that. In the first of a series of episodes about my new Edge of the Empire campaign, I discussed the inspirations, ideas, and thoughts I had going into the campaign. Once I have a clear idea of what I want to accomplish, I'm ready for Session 0 with the players. So join me on the journey. Together, we can become game masters truly worthy of the title. Hello, listener. Greetings, fellow GM and or player. Welcome to episode 58 of Game Master's Journey, your multi-dimensional RPG podcast. I'm your host, Lex Starwalker, and I'm transmitting to you today from the Obsidian Monolith somewhere outside time and space. So this episode today, I'm doing something a little different. This is a bit of an experiment on my part. As I said at the top of the show, I've had quite a few requests from people to hear more about my new Edge of the Empire campaign. One specific person, DM Nell, wrote in and was wanting to hear more about my campaign and how I'm putting it together. And I try to keep this show as generic as possible, which is to say not focused on a particular game. However, oftentimes the best way to illustrate something is through an example, and an example has to be, something a bit more specific. So we'll see how this goes. Definitely let me know what you think. You can reach me by email at gamemastersjourney@gmail.com and let me know if you like this kind of thing, if you want to hear more of it, etc. So yeah, I thought I would talk about my new campaign that I'm running for Star Wars. I am running this in person, and we've just gotten it off the ground. So this is a great time to kind of talk about what I was thinking going into the campaign, how I started preparing for it, what we did in Session 0, and then how I adapted to the feedback I got from the players in Session 0, and then how I started coming up with the first adventures for the first few sessions. And I think that will be a good illustration for those of you that have been asking about at least how I prepare for this particular campaign. I tend to do everyone a little bit different, which I guess makes sense. Like, we're constantly learning, right? But before I get into that, there's a couple other things I want to talk about. First of all, I want to let you know that I am going to be changing the RSS feed for the show. So for those of you that have been with me since the beginning of this podcast, I apologize because you've gone through this once before. I am setting up the new feed on FeedBurner now, so I shouldn't ever have to ask anyone to change their feed. But I am changing where I'm hosting the audio files, so it's necessary to change the RSS feed. Now, if you subscribe to the show through iTunes or Stitcher, you should not have to worry or do anything. I can redirect those to the new feed, and you shouldn't have to do anything on your end. But if you maybe subscribed manually using the RSS URL, or maybe subscribed with some other podcatcher app or some other method of subscribing, it may or may not redirect for you. So I will be changing that later this week. So the next episode, episode 59, will be the first episode using the new feed exclusively. So, I put these out every Tuesday. So if next Tuesday comes along and you don't see episode 59 in your podcast app or whatever you're using, then just head on over to starwalkerstudios.com/Game Master's Journey. Go into any of the show notes for any of the episodes, and at the very top of the show note, you'll see an RSS button. And if you just you can right click on that and save the link address, or you can click on it and then get the address from your address bar in your browser. But just get that RSS URL and put that into your app, and you should be good to go. But again, if you use iTunes or Stitcher, I'm pretty sure that it's going to redirect for you, and you won't have to worry about it. And if you look at the RSS feed that you are subscribed to, if it has the word FeedBurner in the address, then that's the new feed. And if you have any problems with this, if you can't figure it out or you just can't get it to work, please let me know. Don't be shy. You can email me, gamemastersjourney@gmail.com. You can tweet me at Lex Starwalker. You can message me on Google+. Just look for Lex Starwalker. And just let me know, what you're using and what problem you're having, and I'll help you out, because I definitely want everybody to keep getting the show. And I should have set up a FeedBurner a long time ago so we wouldn't have to deal with this. But you live and you learn, right? And I want to send a big thank you out to Justin Lowmaster, who was the one that suggested that I use FeedBurner. So thank you, Justin. Also, I wanted to let you know about a cool Kickstarter you might want to check out. This Kickstarter is called Mythic Mortals, and it's running now. It ends later this week, so you definitely want to go check it out right away. And that is being done by friend of the show, David Shurjuan. I probably just butchered his last name. But it's a cool RPG that he's come up with, a very unique concept, and for resolution in the game and combat and whatnot, he's using a standard deck of playing cards. So I will have a link to his Kickstarter campaign in the show notes for episode 58 at starwalkerstudios.com, or you can just go to Kickstarter and search for Mythic Mortals and go check it out. It's pretty cool. And it's always great to see people like David doing Kickstarters. I feel like that's the heart of what Kickstarter is, or at least that's what makes Kickstarter awesome. But more and more, we see bigger name companies and publishers using Kickstarter to launch new products and try to avoid risk, which, is fine. There's no rules against that. But I really like to support private individuals who are trying to get a start in this industry, because it's not easy. So definitely go check out Mythic Mortals. So as you probably know, all of the Game Master's Journey content that you receive is time shifted, right? I mean, I'm here on the Monolith. I'm outside time and space. I'm nowhere, no when, sharing my thoughts with you who are unfortunately trapped in the space-time continuum. So who knows where or when you listen to this, right? I don't know. But this episode is even more time shifted than the regular episode, because I don't want my players to hear this at a time where it's going to spoil things for them, obviously, right? So if you're one of my players in my Edge of the Empire campaign and you're listening to this right now, don't worry. It's okay. You can listen to it. There shouldn't be any spoilers, because I'm going to wait to transmit this. I'll just keep it in the buffer and I'm going to wait to actually transmit it until we've gotten to a point in the story where this isn't going to spoil anything. But I have had people ask for this, and I am happy to share it. So I'm going to do so, and I'm going to do so now while it's still fairly fresh in my mind. So far, I've gotten together with this group twice, and this is a game that I am running at a physical table with people physically in the room with me, which, discounting Gen Con a couple years ago, I haven't done much in-person gaming for quite a few years. So that's really cool, and it's really cool to play this game physically, because a game like, for instance, Numenera, I don't think loses really a whole lot playing it online, because the system is so simple that it's like, it's easy to do online. But with the Star Wars system, you've got all these dice, and in a way it's easier because, the online dice roller, totals everything for you, and you don't have to cancel symbols. But you don't get the visceral, tactile, feel of holding all those purple dice in your hand or holding all those yellow dice in your hand, right? And I feel like this game especially loses even a little bit more playing online than any RPG would. So I'm really excited to be able to play it in person. So I'm playing it with some people here in the Seattle area. And as I said, we've gotten together twice. We got together for our session 0 where everyone made characters and we talked about ideas for the campaign and worked on character backstories and kind of tried to weave everybody together as much as we could. And then we had our first session. But I should point out that in addition to these 2 game sessions that we've had, which are each about 4 hours, I also set up a Google Plus community for the group, and it's a private community. Just members of the group are in there, and we use that to discuss the game. And we've talked a lot about people's character concepts on there. We talked about their ship. People have had in-character discussions, and it's just a place for us to gather together virtually when we're not physically together gaming to talk about the campaign. So even going into session 0, everybody had a pretty good idea what they were going to play and what everybody else was going to play, because we discussed it a lot on the community. But I think quite a few of the people came with kind of more than one idea and wasn't sure which one they were going to go with. And then I think a few of them kind of had down what they wanted to play. So I would definitely recommend that to you, even if your group is meeting in person. A Google community is a great way to be able to get together virtually away from the table and share all these things, and it keeps it all together so that it's easy to find what you're looking for, and you can share images and videos and just all kinds of stuff. I really love the Google Plus communities. I have quite a few of them that I've created for various things. So, first of all, I guess I'm trying to do this to be helpful to you if maybe you're wanting to create your own Star Wars campaign or just any campaign, because again, a lot of this is going to translate to any game that you're doing as far as what I'm doing and how I'm doing it. So I guess the first thing to talk about is what I had at the beginning, like kind of what was the seed of this campaign when I first started thinking, what do I want to do with a Star Wars campaign? Like what was going through my mind, right? So I ran Star Wars back in the West End games days, and I ran a little bit of Star Wars, one of the D20 versions. I can't keep them straight. They're all so similar. It wasn't Saga. One of the D20 versions before Saga. I ran some of that. And yeah, I didn't like the D20 version. The West End was okay. It kind of... The more you played it and the more kind of characters advanced and stuff, the more it kind of started to come apart at the seams. But it was all right. But I never really felt, all those times running Star Wars before, that I ever really had the experience that I was wanting to have. And part of that might have been just because I didn't know exactly what that was, though I think I had a pretty good idea. But I think a lot of it was just honestly the system. And, this Star Wars system, for the first time, is going to let me really have the Star Wars campaign that I've always wanted to have. So in a way, at square one, I already had a pretty good feel for what I wanted because I'd tried to do it before in the past. So basically, my idea for the campaign is I wanted to have the story be about the crew of a ship, of what in West End Games days we called a tramp freighter, a light freighter. So, I have a few inspirations for this to kind of help me kind of get at kind of what I'm going for here. So one, I don't know if this is really an inspiration because this isn't something that I really thought about much coming up with the campaign, but I think it's a way to communicate to you what I'm talking about really easily for a lot of you. And that's this show you might remember called Firefly. Now, I'm going to drop the bomb here, and hopefully I don't have a bunch of people unsubscribe, but I'm actually not much of a Firefly fan. And I'm not going to go into it because people who like their Firefly love their Firefly, and I don't want to offend people by talking about too much about why I didn't like it. But suffice it to say, I thought the show had its moments, but overall, it wasn't really anything special to me. I don't think it really worked totally well. But one thing that I did like about the show was how the show kind of showed this group of people brought together on this little ship, and how they just kind of had each other to rely on, and how, they had to keep the ship flying, so they had to do jobs and make money, keep gas in the gas tank and all that good stuff. And how, as various adventures happened, they made allies, they made enemies, and enemies, came back to bite them later. And so that's kind of my pitch. Think a Firefly type thing. Although, like I said, Firefly wasn't really an inspiration to me, but it's just an easy way to describe it to people. And I actually got that idea from a buddy, Derek Pounds, who's one of the players in the game and is also running his own Star Wars campaign, and I'm a player in. And that's kind of how he described it to me. And again, I would have never thought to use Firefly as an example, because I just don't think about Firefly because I didn't really care for it. But when he described his campaign to me and referenced Firefly, I was like, oh yeah, that is a great reference that a lot of people will understand. Another show that's more modern that is a big inspiration for me is the show you might have heard of called Dark Matter. And Dark Matter is in some ways similar in that you have a group of people on a ship, but even more so in Dark Matter, they are completely dependent on one another, to the point that each other person on the ship is really all that they have. I don't really want to go into too many details of Dark Matter, because even if I just start going into the most basic stuff, I'm going to spoil the first episode for you, the reveal at the end of the first episode, which has probably already been spoiled to you by some other asshole on the internet by now. But anyway, if you haven't watched Dark Matter, go check it out. Yeah, so that's a big inspiration for me, and very much an inspiration for me as far as like the feel of the adventures and kind of the tone and the underbelly or on the fringe side of Edge of the Empire, where, if your character is not a criminal, you're probably pretty close to it, right? Another inspiration is the new show Star Wars Rebels, which, despite the fact that it's a cartoon and made for kids and all the things that make it less than awesome because of that, I still like the show, and there's some cool setting stuff in there and stuff like that. And again, you have the crew of a small ship working together, only in that show they're actively working with the rebellion. And something I love about Edge of the Empire, and why it's hands down, my favorite of the three games that Fantasy Flight puts out, is I really like the ne'er-do-well, on the wrong side of the law, Han Solo, Lando Calrissian type stuff. Like, that's always been my favorite part of Star Wars. And I love that that's what this game focuses on, and I really want to keep my focus there. So I'm open to the possibility of the players at some point becoming involved with the rebellion, but that would be something that would probably happen because the players expressed a lot of interest in it. I don't know that I would necessarily bring that about myself, though I might. Reading about the rebellion in the Edge of the Empire core book, I really liked how cautious they are, and how, realistically, if you're going to get involved with the rebellion, you're going to be working for the rebellion for a long time before you even know that you're working for the rebellion, right? Whoever your contact is, it's giving you jobs. They're not going to tell you they're part of the rebellion. They're not going to acknowledge that they're part of the rebellion, and they never will until they know very, very well that you're trustworthy, right? And even then, that person only maybe knows, the people in his cell, right? He doesn't know who the leadership of the rebellion is. He doesn't know that Mon Mothma is the big cheese or anything like that, right? So I really like that, and it makes a lot of sense for that kind of an organization that's the way it would work. So if I ever brought that in, I would do that, and the PCs would be working for someone for a long time, and then later find out, oh, this person's affiliated with the rebellion, and now that we've impressed her enough, she is, offering us to kind of let us in, into the circle a little bit and let us actually become part of the resistance, which could be cool. Another idea is the Black Sun, which is very similar in that you will be working for the Black Sun for a long time before you ever find out that you're working for the Black Sun. And in fact, you probably never will find out that you're working for the Black Sun because they are very cautious and secretive. So I could do that too. And I think I would more likely go the Black Sun route than the Rebellion, just because I think it fits Edge of the Empire better and fits, the themes of the game and the campaign I want to run better. But the cool thing about how those work is I could conceivably have an NPC the PCs are working for and know to myself that, okay, this is going to be their gateway into either the Rebellion or the Black Sun. And I don't even need to know as a GM or decide right away which of those it is, right? Because the PCs aren't going to know for quite a while. And so I have all that time to decide and get a feel for which of those the PCs would be more excited about, finding out they're working for the Black Sun or finding out they're working for the Rebellion. Or maybe they find out they're working for both. All right, so inspirations. I've got Dark Matter. I've got Rebels. Huge inspiration for this entire campaign is an actual supplement for the game called Lords of Nal Hutta. And other than the core book, Lords of Nal Hutta is hands down my favorite book for the game. And it's just pretty much a setting book. There is some player stuff. There's a few species in there and some equipment and stuff. Because, I don't know, for some reason, well, I guess I know why, but Fantasy Flight Games seems to want to not make a book that's just for players or just for GMs, so they try to throw a little player crap in every book, even though, like, Lords of Nal Hutta is clearly a book for GMs. I don't know why a player would spend the money to get that, but they're trying to entice you to get it by putting a few species in there and stuff, trying to get you to spend your hard-earned money on a book that you're going to use like 10% of. But anyway, I'm not a fan of that. I'd rather, that they not try to money grab so much and, had put those options in a player supplement and had more setting and GM stuff for me in the GM supplement. But anyway, that's a topic for another day. I might someday make a show about how I feel about the way Fantasy Flight Games is producing these games, because although I really like the system, I'm not a fan of how they're producing it and how they're forcing you to spend a lot more money than you should have to if you want to have a good selection of the rules. And God forbid if you want to actually use things from Age of Rebellion or Force and Destiny in your Edge of the Empire campaign. I mean, forget it. But anyway, so Lords of Nal Hutta is a huge inspiration in that it's detailing hut space, which I'm going to have a lot, if not maybe even the majority of the campaign take place in hut space. Talks a lot about the huts and how they work. And I knew from the very beginning of planning the campaign that I wanted the PCs working for a hut. Everybody loves Jabba, right? And I love the huts, and the more I learned about them from the Lords of Nal Hutta book, the more and more I like them. So yeah, I had to have that book, and once I got it and read it, it's become indispensable for locations and NPCs and just ideas of things to do. Another big inspiration is another book in the line called Fly Casual, which is the Smuggler Splat book. It's the only Splat book for the game I've bought. Probably will be the only one I will buy, although I might get the Technician one when it comes out, depending what they do with it. But for the most part, I don't like Splat books and books like that, with just like a bunch of player options, but only for one class. I'm just not a fan unless... I mean, again, I'm a GM, right? So if I was just playing Star Wars and I always played Smugglers, then maybe I'd be all about the Smuggler book. But as a GM, they're really almost completely useless to me. I mean, they do have new ships and new equipment that I could use. But other than that, it's kind of useless to me. I don't need another talent tree. I'm the GM, right? So the players are free to get those and use them, whatever. But the Fly Casual one I did get because it has some information for smuggling and like how to decide, how much the PCs get paid. And it has a real cool system involving negotiation roles where the PCs can actually increase or decrease their payout with negotiation, which is really cool. Talks about, how much of a bonus do you get if you get the shipment there a day early and stuff like that. Also goes into some astrogation mishaps and stuff like that. So because I wanted this campaign to so much be focused on smuggling, it's a big inspiration and a must-have for me for the campaign. And of course, the original Star Wars movies, specifically anything involving Han Solo, or Lando Calrissian, or Boba Fett, or any of the other bounty hunters that we see, Jabba the Hutt, all that seedy Outer Rim stuff that we see in the original trilogy. Kind of like if you imagine Star Wars without Jedi. That's kind of, the inspiration for this. Nothing, well, I don't have a whole lot against Jedi. I feel like having a Jedi, it just totally changes the game, right? You're in full fantasy mode now, and any even attempts at appearing to be science fiction are gone at that point. But, and that's another thing is I am trying to be a little more sci-fi with my Star Wars, which I might be betting on a losing horse there, but I am trying to make it as sci-fi as possible and try to get more on the sci-fi side of things than fantasy, because I love sci-fi. All right, so that's kind of the inspirations. And the idea that I kind of had in the beginning is all of the PCs are the crew of the ship, and they're smugglers, or at least that's what the ship does, because if you look at like Fly Casual and the information in the core book, if you have a light freighter and you're trying to make a living trading legal goods legally and going through customs and all that stuff, it's very difficult to break even and almost impossible to make a profit. And even if you do make a profit, you can't live on it, right? You're going to be making like pocket change of profit. And the reason for that is because there are so many taxes and tariffs and customs duties and all these things that eat into whatever profit margin you have. And, some of the examples given in the book is anytime you load or unload cargo, you pay a tax. Anytime you move from one sector to another, you pay a tax. Not to mention, landing fees, docking fees, birthing fees, birthing as in birthing a ship, not birthing a child. Fuel, food, supplies for the ship, repairs, upgrades to the ship, And obviously, if you've read the core book as a GM at all, that kind of the shtick of this game is keeping the PCs poor and having basically needing money being the main motivator for them to quote unquote adventure, right? Because if they become millionaires, why would they go out risking their lives smuggling or bounty hunting or whatever, right? So the idea is to try to keep the PCs poor. So for all these ways that you have money coming in, you got to have ways for money going out and all that stuff. So basically, if you want to make good money with a light freighter, you've got to smuggle. You've got to either transport illegal cargo or transport legal cargo, but avoid the customs patrols and avoid paying the taxes you're supposed to pay so that you can actually make a decent profit. Either of these, of course, is illegal to do and is smuggling. So the idea is that, they have this ship as a communal resource, and this is their way to try to quote unquote make a living in the galaxy. The most common thing they're probably going to do is forms of smuggling. And, I left it very open to the players as far as, where are you going to go with this, right? Because you could smuggle legal things and just avoid the tariffs and stuff. You could smuggle spice, right? Narcotics. You could smuggle weapons to the Rebel Alliance, or smuggle weapons to anyone who will pay for them. So there's this kind of moral, ethical dilemma, right? Like, how bad do you want to be? But, other ways that they could maybe make a little coin here and there, just like in Firefly, is they could take on legitimate cargo, just to fill out their cargo hold to go with their illegitimate cargo. Plus, it's nice if you get an inspection to have something legitimate in your hold to make it seem like everything's on the up and up. And, if they come in and find an empty hold, they might be more likely to suspect you've got something hidden somewhere, right? And maybe take on passengers. Things like that. So there's other things along with the smuggling that they can do to earn money, but I see smuggling as being the main breadwinner for them. And of course, it depends on what the players decide to do. For instance, if someone decides to play a bounty hunter, then they can make money going after bounties as well. So this is kind of, the pitch I gave to the players. And, I told them, I said, we're really going to be focused on smuggling and kind of on the business side of this, in that it's so hard to make a living. And, I really like the moments in like Dark Matter or even Firefly where, they really have to worry about, we've only got enough fuel to get to these 4 places, and then we're dry and we can't do what we do anymore. So we really need to find a job in this area that will pay enough, that we can get back on our feet. And I like the drama of that. And I like that as a motivating force to keep the story going, right? But I don't want to get like too much into like bookkeeping and accounting, because, that's not fun. So trying to find a happy balance there. And, I advise the players that, you should really think about what your character can do both on the ground and on the ship. And the thing is the thing that's brought you all together is you're a crew member on this ship. So one of you is going to play the captain, the person who's in charge, the CEO of your business venture, the person who owns the title to the ship and probably owes someone a lot of money for the ship. And then every other character, every other PC is an employee of that person, right? And got hired to do a specific job on the ship. So it's very important that your character has something that they can do on the ship, whether you're the pilot or the mechanic or a gunner or whatever, right? So I told them, when you're thinking of character concepts, make sure that you have something that you can do on the ship, that it's feasible, that you would get hired on to do that. And then the other thing I told them is to think about what you can do on the ground. And, I like the idea of you being like a team, not just on the ship, but on the ground as well. Something from Leverage, or even like the A-Team, right? Where everybody on the team has something that they're really good at, that they're known for, that they're a specialist at. And together, they're a formidable force, just like on Leverage. Everybody has a very specific job that they're really good at. And when they all work together, they're practically unstoppable. So that's kind of what I gave them as far as guidelines. And that was basically it. I left it pretty open. I told people, I was like, if someone wants to play a Force user, I'm getting the Force and Destiny book, even though I'm paying way too much for it. So I will have that for you. If you want to go that route, you can have more options of things to do with that. And, other than that, kind of the sky's the limit. In the next part of this series of episodes about my Edge of the Empire campaign, I'll tell you about Session 0 and the characters that the players came up with. And you'll begin to see how I'm taking my original ideas for the campaign and molding them and adapting them to the ideas that the players are bringing to the table during Session 0. So that won't be the next episode of the show. It might be a few episodes before I release part 2 of this. Again, I'm kind of spacing them out, partly because I don't know what percentage of listeners will actually be interested in this. And for those of you that aren't interested, I don't want, that you have to wait through multiple episodes in a row to get to something you're interested in. And also partly because, I'm running this for my players. I don't know how many of them listen to the show, and I don't want to spoil anything for my players. So I'm kind of spacing them out so that the players can always be ahead of where I'm at as far as talking about it on the show. But I will definitely be coming back to this and letting you know more about the campaign and how things are going. And again, I want to remind you, if you've subscribed to the show some way other than iTunes or Stitcher, please head on over to Starwalker Studios and grab the new feed URL, and please use that to update your subscription. You can use that right now. I haven't switched over to that completely, but that new feed does work. So you can do it right now. You don't have to wait till next week or whenever. But yeah, and again, if you have any questions or issues with that, how to do that, please feel free to ask me. I'll be happy to help you out. And you can reach me by email at gamemastersjourney@gmail.com. You can find me on Google+, just look for Lex Starwalker, and you can find me on Twitter at Lex Starwalker. And again, please visit the website, starwalkerstudios.com, for the show notes. Also, if you would like to support the show, you can find our donate button there if you'd like to make a one-time donation, or you can find our Patreon button that will take you to the Patreon page for Starwalker Studios if you would like to become a patron. And also at starwalkerstudios.com, you can check out the other podcasts that we produce. Also, right now, we're producing Beer Tasters, which is our craft beer podcast, and Expanse, the unofficial podcast, which is a podcast all about the upcoming sci-fi TV series Expanse, which is starting in December, based on the series of books by James S.A. Corey. And we're starting out by talking about some of the cast members and just giving you some basic information about the setup in the story so that you can really hit the ground running on December 14th when the first episode of the TV show comes out. This is a spoiler-free show, so even though Nikki and I have read the books, we are not going to spoil the TV show for you because that would be really uncool. So definitely check that out at starwalkerstudios.com. I hope that you have a chance to play your favorite RPG this week. I'll be back next week with another episode of Game Master's Journey. Until then, game on.
This has been a Starwalker Studios production, your source for quality gaming and hobby podcasts.
This episode's music provided by Cloudwalker, Renfield, Transboy, and Ish. Please see the show notes for more details at starwalkerstudios.com/GameMastersJourney.